and a professional educator. By the way, that spells flip.
Aren't we clever?
Yeah. It spells flip. And so
I didn't want to do it, but they made me do it. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Aaron didn't like that acronym, but I do. I like it. It's easy to remember, but also what we want to do is really the balance of our time. Not balance, but the next chunk of time. We want to talk through each of these segments and what we mean by each. So let's talk about the flexible environment. So when we talk about the flexible environment, when people think of environment, they think of the physical space of the room. But we want to go deeper. So that is one of the aspects. So when we talk about flexible environments, the three things that we say that you need to have flexibility is in spaces, assessment, and pedagogy. So these are the three things. We're going to talk about each of them one at a time. So let's talk about spaces first. So if you, in a traditional space, like this room right here, it reinforces a particular kind of content delivery, doesn't it? I mean, if you've been in, I went to a large university, and I took that freshman college chemistry class, and me and my 399 closest friends were in the room, and the whole chemistry professor and the board and whatever he's going to do, right? That is the whole focus of that space. And so our spaces reinforce a particular kind of content delivery system, doesn't it?
And not even just the space. I mean, look at, put an interactive whiteboard. If you put an interactive whiteboard on the front of the classroom, what does that say? That says this is a teacher presentation station. If you put an interactive whiteboard on the side of the classroom, what does that say? That says this is a student workstation. So by simply the position of a piece of equipment can convey a message as to what its purpose is. So again, this is not novel or new to flipped learning environments, but this is a question that anyone who flips their classroom has to begin to face. It's okay, well, if my classroom doesn't have to be oriented like this, how should I orient it based on what's going on in my classroom?
We visited hundreds, probably, of flipped classrooms, and they never look like this. They look like something else. People have designed them in different ways. They've got learning spaces. For us, we just rearranged our furniture. I mean, we didn't have any money to buy fancy stuff like this. This is a learning space I was in Connecticut recently, and it was awesome. But they had a lot of money to put into it. But we just rearranged our furniture.
I took my old couch from my house and I put it in my classroom. I'm pretty sure I violated some fire code laws by doing that. But again, by having a space, the couch space in my classroom was I'm going to sit here, and that was a visual cue to me that I need to go help the student. They need individual attention, and so the rule was, if you need some help and you can't flag me down, just go sit on the couch, and my next pass around the room, I'll sit down and I'll work with you.
So Aaron, we get this video that I shot of you in your class. Can you talk them through kind of the spaces in this video?
Yeah, so again, since no money, we just reoriented things, and students are doing all sorts of things. So they're working in the lab, obviously, because that's kind of fixed, and I have a lab area. But then I had some paperwork areas. This is still more labbing away. Okay, so areas for students to work on like paperwork, and areas for students to take exams. Notice they're facing away from the wall so I can see them. A place for me to go over the exam with my student. A place for students to sit and view video content if they needed to. A place for students to have individualized help. This is a free couch. And then a place for me to clean up messes, because that's what we do in chemistry. Again, more exam places. So you can just see there's just different layouts, different areas for people to do different things. And again, this is not rocket science, but that's just what it is.
In many ways, it's like, I don't know, in the elementary world, we had stations around a room.
Centers.
Right? Centers. Stations or centers, whatever you want to call them. This is what we did. Yeah. Oh, yeah. You collapse at the end. So that's the spaces. So flexible environment includes spaces, but it also includes pedagogy. Okay, so if in a traditional environment, it implies a certain way of acquiring knowledge, not just the spaces, but the way that we teach. But when you flip, it becomes more time shifted. So Aaron, time shift, I guess we've sort of talked about this, but I think it's important to put it around.
Yeah, I mean, the idea is that you are a flexible individual, and you can move in and out of functions. You're not just there as the source of information, the fount of all knowledge, right? Students can find all sorts of content with or without you, but what they need your help for is to help them process that, help them to make sense of it, help them to make meaning of it, and to know whether or not this is a reliable source of information. So, really, I wanted face-to-face time with my students. I really wanted to get to know the kid who had a D- in the last row that I didn't really get to talk to very often.
Once I flipped my class, I talked to every student in every class every day, and I knew where they were in the material. I knew what they understood, what they didn't understand, and I got to know them as a person better in the first 2 weeks of school than I ever did in the first 2 months of school prior to that. So I really wanted to just change my function and my role as a teacher and to meet individual learning needs. So there's a lot of discussion. We heard it from the student panel. I heard it from some of you who I was talking to as you were coming in. This idea of students are demanding, I need a personalized education. I want to be control. I want to have control over that. I want to learn. I need someone to help me know what I don't know, but I want it to be designed for me. And then some of the pain points that some of you were experiencing and that some others were experiencing was like, how do we do that? I can only deliver one education. Well, if you do this, yes. But if you leverage technology and you meet individual needs because you have time to do that, then you can start to personalize, you can start to individualize education for students. This is a step towards the reality that those students are demanding.
I think the magic of the flipped classroom might be just this. It gets the teacher away from the front of the room. So the teacher is standing in front of the room now doing his or her thing, and now you are now in and amongst the students. There was sort of a running joke at their school, at Woodland Park High School, is, guys, teachers remember this, some kid walks into the room and he's got the paper that he's supposed to give to the kid, right? He's from the office, right? So he's got to give the paper. So where does he look? He walks in and he looks at the front of the room where the chalkboard is, right? And they said, Mr. Bergman, we can never find you because you're always in and amongst your students.
And shorter than most.
And I'm short too, yeah. So, because I'm sitting here, I'm there, I'm always around the room, but it's hard to find me because they want to just walk in hand and say, give this to Joe. Or whatever. It's like, well, too bad. I said, I don't know if the white hair has anything to do with it, but they find me. So anyways, flexible pedagogy. The second one, or the last one in this flexible learning environment is assessment. So, again, we have very traditional assessments usually, right? And you can argue whether or not this makes a difference, but when people first flip, let me say this, they probably stick with their same assessments. But we are finding over and over and over again that as people move sort of through the flipped classroom to deeper learning strategies, that they are doing different types of assessments. I attended, our big conference was just last week, and at our big conference at FlipCon, there were many sessions on assessment and how assessment can be rethought in terms of the flipped classroom. But probably the key thing is just the formative assessment. So Aaron, when we flipped, we began to really rethink formative in particular. So talk about
you know, as a high school teachers, we're just really bad at this. It's like prepping for the test, prepping for the test, prepping for the test. And the feedback that we get from the students along the way is you got the stack of worksheets, right? And the stack of papers and projects that you take home. And you know, you may get around to it that night, it might be the next night. And so kids might get feedback on what they just did 48 hours after the fact. And we all know that that's not valuable feedback. Once the kid hands that in, it is out of their hair and they don't care about it anymore, right? But this kind of feedback, I was still using my same materials for the first few years that I flipped my class, but instead of collecting a big stack of papers, I would just talk to the kids. I said, talk me through number 2. You know, I noticed that you made the same mistake on all of these. Let's help you fix that before this takes deep root. So just lots of Q&A. I was keeping track. I had my little clipboard. I kind of knew where everyone was at. I knew who I needed to follow up with later on. But so instead of just collecting and hoping for the best, I was talking to every single kid. Tons of formative assessment. And this was a function of, again, this change in pedagogy, my change in my function, my role as a teacher. I was able to actually do this kind of assessment.
And speaking of personalization, you're talking to every kid, and not just talking to them, you're doing many formative assessments, you know, every moment practically with kids. So, so the first F was a flexible environment. And then the next one is learning culture. All right. So we're going to talk about learning culture. What we really believe is we need to move